Imagine trying to build the perfect storage system with no ruler, no blueprint, no metal, no concrete, and no hands. Your only building material is wax produced by your own body. It costs energy to make, it takes time to shape, and the structure has to hold food, protect babies, survive heat, support weight, and fit together with thousands of other identical rooms. Now imagine that after millions of years, the solution is not random. It is not messy. It is one of the most elegant shapes in nature, the hexagon. A honeycomb looks simple at first, just a pattern of little six-sided cells. But the more closely you look, the stranger it becomes. Why six sides? Why not circles? Why not triangles? Why not squares? Why do bees across the world, without ever attending a math class, keep building one of the most efficient geometric structures on Earth? The answer begins with a problem every builder understands. Space. A beehive is not just a home. It is a factory, nursery, warehouse, communication center, and survival machine all at once. Inside the comb, bees store honey, keep pollen, raise young bees, and organize the life of the colony. Every tiny cell matters. If the bees waste space, they waste wax. If they waste wax, they waste energy. And for a creature as small as a bee, energy is everything. Wax is expensive. Bees produce it from special glands on their bodies, but making wax requires food, and that food comes from nectar collected flower by flower. So if a colony can build a strong comb using slightly less wax, that colony has an advantage. Less wax means more energy left for gathering food, feeding larvae, surviving winter, and expanding the hive. So the perfect honeycomb cell needs to solve three problems at once. It must use little material. It must store as much as possible. And it must fit together without leaving gaps. That last part is where geometry enters the hive. Think about circles. A circle is excellent for enclosing area. If you had one single container and wanted to use the smallest boundary around the largest space, a circle would be a great choice. That is why bubbles are round and why many natural forms curve. But circles have a problem when you try to pack them together. Put circles side by side, and little gaps appear between them. Those gaps are wasted space. For bees, wasted space is a luxury they cannot afford, so the shape has to tile the plane. That means it must repeat over and over across a flat surface without leaving holes. Regular triangles can do that. Squares can do that. Regular hexagons can do that. But regular pentagons cannot. Circles cannot. Many other shapes either leave gaps or create awkward, uneven spaces. Now the question becomes more interesting. If triangles, squares, and hexagons can all fit perfectly, why do bees choose hexagons? Picture 3 storage rooms with the same amount of floor space. One is shaped like a triangle, one like a square, and one like a hexagon. The triangle works, but it has sharp corners and needs relatively more wall for the same amount of usable space. The square is better. It is simple and efficient. But the hexagon gets closer to the efficiency of a circle while still fitting neatly with its neighbors. That is the beauty of the hexagon. It behaves almost like a circle, but unlike a circle, it leaves no gaps. A hexagonal grid allows each wall to be shared between 2 neighboring cells. One thin wax wall serves both sides. Nothing is duplicated unnecessarily. The pattern spreads in every direction, creating a strong, lightweight, space-saving structure. This idea is so powerful that humans use it too. Engineers use honeycomb patterns in aircraft panels, cardboard, protective packaging, building materials, and lightweight structures where strength matters, but extra weight is a problem. The reason is simple. Honeycomb geometry distributes forces well. It gives a lot of strength with relatively little material. Bees arrived at that solution long before human engineering had a name. But the most fascinating part is this. Bees are not sitting inside the hive calculating angles. A worker bee does not look at a wax wall and think, this angle should be 120 degrees. The colony is not secretly doing advanced mathematics. Instead, the hexagon emerges from a combination of instinct, behavior, physics, and evolution. Bees build with wax that is warm and workable. Inside a hive, thousands of bees regulate temperature, and the wax can become soft enough to be shaped and adjusted. When cells are built close together, pressure from neighboring cells helps produce straight, shared walls. Similar physical principles can be seen in bubbles. When many bubbles are packed together, they often form walls that meet at efficient angles, because the system naturally tends to reduce surface area. That does not mean honeycombs are made by accident. Bees actively build, measure, adjust, and repair their combs through behavior shaped by evolution. But physics helps. The material, the heat, the pressure, and the repeated activity of many bees all work together to produce a pattern that is remarkably efficient. This is what makes honeycombs so interesting. It is not just biology, and it is not just mathematics. It is both. For centuries, people noticed that honeycombs looked too perfect to ignore. Ancient thinkers admired the shape. Mathematicians studied it. The so-called honeycomb problem asked whether the hexagonal grid is truly the most efficient way to divide a surface into equal areas using the least total wall length. Modern mathematics eventually confirmed that the regular hexagonal pattern is optimal for that kind of problem. In other words, the bees were not just building something pretty. They were using a solution that humans later proved with mathematics. Of course, real honeycombs are not always perfect. If you look closely, you may find irregular cells, transitions, repairs, and distortions. Bees are living animals, not machines. A hive has curves, obstacles, changing needs, and constant activity. Some cells are made larger for drones, the male bees. Some areas are modified depending on what the colony needs. But across the main worker comb, the repeating hexagonal structure appears again and again because it works. And it works at multiple levels. At the level of space, hexagons pack tightly with no gaps. At the level of material, shared walls reduce the amount of wax needed. At the level of strength, the pattern distributes load across the comb. At the level of colony survival, efficient construction saves energy. That is a lot of success for a shape most people barely notice. There is another detail that makes the honeycomb even more impressive. The cells are not just flat hexagons drawn on a surface. They are three-dimensional chambers. They extend inward, creating little tubes where honey can be stored and larvae can develop. The bottom of each cell is not simply flat like the bottom of a cup. It has a carefully shaped structure that connects with cells on the other side of the comb. This adds even more efficiency and strength. A honeycomb is often built as a double-sided sheet, with cells facing both directions. The base between the two sides is arranged so the structure is stable and economical. It is not just a wall of holes. It is a lightweight architectural system. The more you understand it, the more a honeycomb stops looking like a simple natural pattern and starts looking like a masterpiece of engineering. But there is a deeper lesson here. When people say bees chose hexagons, it can sound as if an individual bee made a conscious design decision. That is not really what happened. Nature does not need to plan the way humans plan. Evolution works through small advantages repeated over long periods of time. A colony that builds slightly more efficiently may save a little more energy. It may store a little more honey. It may survive a difficult season when another colony fails. Over many generations, small advantages can shape instincts and behaviors. The result can look intentional, even when no single animal understands the whole design. That is one of the most beautiful things about nature. Complexity can emerge from simple rules. Order can arise without a central architect. A honeycomb is made by thousands of tiny actions, each one local and limited, but together they produce something extraordinary. The same idea appears all over the natural world. Snowflakes form symmetrical patterns from the physics of water molecules. Bird flocks create flowing shapes without a leader controlling every movement. Termites build huge mounds through collective behavior. Ants create efficient trails by following chemical signals. No single individual needs to understand the entire system. The pattern emerges from interaction. Bees and honeycombs are one of the clearest examples because the final result is so visual. You can hold a piece of comb in your hand and see the logic immediately. Wall, space, all locked together in a repeating rhythm. And that rhythm has consequences. Honey is heavy. A full comb can hold a surprising amount of weight compared with the delicate wax used to build it. The hexagonal structure helps spread that weight across the comb instead of concentrating stress in one place. That is why honeycomb-inspired materials are so useful in human design. They are light, but they can be strong. This is also why the honeycomb is such a powerful symbol. It represents cooperation. No single bee builds the whole thing alone. It represents efficiency. Almost nothing is wasted. It represents intelligence without a blueprint, beauty without decoration, and engineering without engineers. And perhaps that is what makes it so captivating. The hexagon in a honeycomb is not just a shape. It is the meeting point of survival and geometry. A bee does not need to know what a hexagon is. It does not need language, formulas, or diagrams. Yet through instinct, physical forces, and evolutionary pressure, it helps create a structure that solves a problem humans can describe in mathematics, but still admire with wonder. So the next time you see a honeycomb, do not think of it as just a place where honey is stored. Think of it as a quiet equation made of wax, a solution built by thousands of insects working in the dark. A natural design so efficient that engineers copy it, mathematicians study it, and humans still pause when they see it. The honeycomb reminds us that nature often finds answers before we even know how to ask the question. And sometimes, the perfect solution is not hidden in a laboratory, a machine, or a computer. Sometimes it is hanging inside a hive, made of wax, glowing gold, and built one six-sided cell at a time.
Thanks for watching! If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. See you in the next one!